Pennsylvania's state system of higher education. 14 universities, infinite opportunities. This week, we'll learn about the international programs offered at universities throughout the state system. But first, we'll hear from Kirsten Bookmiller, Director of Global Education and Partnerships at Millersville University.
Hello, I'm Frank Brogan, the Chancellor of Pennsylvania's State System of Higher Education, and welcome to another program, Infinite Opportunities. This is our opportunity to talk to the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania about our 14 wonderful institutions of higher education. Over 100,000 students comprise our undergraduate and graduate programs, and we bring them together with some of the finest faculty and staff you'll find in our country. We have a very unique opportunity today to highlight an important and yet growing part of the academic profile for our students, and that's covering the issue of international education. We have an expert with us today. Dr. Kirsten Bookmiller from Millersville University is with us today. She is Professor of Government and Political Affairs, and she also works very heavily in the area of international studies. And Dr. Bookmiller, we are delighted to have you with us today. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Chancellor Brogan. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, there are so many new buzzwords in and around the world of higher education today, it's hard to keep track, and they're all important, but because they are relatively new in the scheme of things, one of those happens to be globalization education. Can you tell those watching today what globalization education is and why it's important for the students of our state university system?
Absolutely. Well, it's a passion of mine, and it's been one for a long time. And we used to, 20 years ago, talk about something, we used the phrase international education, but that tended to imply a little bit more boundaries and different countries, and that we still had kind of obstacles in interacting with each other. Globalized education is something more. It implies kind of that, you know, borders and boundaries are erased, and we're really kind of truly a single global international community, and that education has to follow that new dynamic that we see in the 21st century. So in the old days, international education was kind of limited to very specific disciplines, you know, what we would traditionally think in terms of foreign languages and politics and so forth, so a little bit more restricted. And we had, for the very, very elite, a study abroad experience during, you know, the standard junior year, but only for a very small handful of people. Globalized education now means everything. It's just kind of extraordinary. The horizon is completely opened up. So at Millersville, for instance, we have an interdisciplinary international studies program that has 16 different departments that contribute to it. And it includes departments like math and applied engineering and biology, as well as the more kind of conventional subjects that we might see. And so we've got, it's across a campus. It's not just in a particular building that we see this ethic being embraced. And it is study abroad, but it's not just the junior year, and it's not just a particular sector of the student population. It's really now just so broadly encompassing of across the campus community, and it can be 2 weeks intensively, or it can be a full year. It can be internships, it can be community service and service learning abroad. It has a variety of kind of elements. And then beyond that, a truly globalized campus has a lot happening on the campus itself. We say at Millersville, one of our kind of long time philosophies is that we bring the globe, we bring the world to the university itself. So that, of course, is international students. Certainly, that's one element to it. But it's also bringing faculty from abroad. In the international studies major, for instance, at MU, we have every January a faculty member who comes to teach an intensive course for students who might not be able to get abroad. And so we have that dynamic. And it's also embracing what's happening within your local community. So in Lancaster County, where we are, for instance, we have a very significant refugee community. And so we're encouraging our students not only to think about, okay, it's a study abroad element, or it's studying a particular discipline, but knowing that they have to engage with the community and kind of really embrace and wrestle with diversity too. So any university that's going to prep their students for, and almost any discipline, it's got to have that multifaceted approach. Thank you.
You touched on something that so many important topics, but one of them I really find fascinating, and that is the fact that we are moving to a broader base, where it used to be simply the traditional semester abroad. Still wonderful, still very effective, and yet we also realized we weren't reaching all of our students, and we were making it an away course opportunity as opposed to a home and away course opportunity for students. Can you zero in a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. It's something that a lot of, again, universities across the country and also here within the system, we're trying to find ways for those whole experiences to be deeply interlinked. And so, for instance, we've had students who studied abroad, and it could be an education major, it could be a social work major. Again, it's so many different fields of study. But when they come back, they then see their own local community in a very different way, and I've seen this again and again. They're extremely eager to connect then with the environment just off campus. And they see it in new ways, and they see all the international and the global elements that are really important, whether it's immigration, whether it's in the environment, whether it's the diversity they see in a classroom, the people that they will be working with. And so that's really the task for all of us, is for us to view that in a seamless chain of experiences that can take place.
And of course, international education is not a one-way street. We send students to places around the world, and we receive students from places around the world. But more than just a destination university for a student from China or from Spain or from Italy, there has to be a culture awaiting them that will not only immerse them in that university and give them a chance to be successful, but also a place that they can contribute to by way of teaching, because students who come from other countries can be every bit as much teachers of other cultures as they can students of ours. Tell us a little bit about how Millersville promotes that kind of a culture.
Yes, it's something that we have been doing a little under the radar for a while, but now over the past couple of years have really just broken that piece of it open, and it's so exciting, Chancellor Brogan, that we are having, kind of very significant, very diverse international student population that we hope to continue to expand. And I have witnessed it in my own classes, just the extraordinary energy that comes out of having that kind of diversity, so that it, for the American students, when we talk about these kind of global issues and challenges, we have students there able to tell them, they're from their own personal experiences what that is like. And yes, we have, I can tell you, we've had a lot of very intentional, very high-level discussions about what it is to be a welcoming community for those students and to help them succeed. We're sensitive to the fact that these are not interchangeable experiences, and so we have to put an infrastructure into place and hope, and we're very confident that once they graduate with an MU degree that they'll feel that this is another home for them.
Dr. Bookmiller, most people are aware of how to organize a family vacation. But that's not what an international education experience is. And of course, there are great complexities and even in some cases challenges for the students who are a part of international education programming, whether they are our students going abroad or whether they are students from other countries coming to Millersville University. What are some of those challenges that you typically see?
Well, culture shock, as it's referred to, is very real and very genuine, and we try to reassure the students going in both directions, that even when we travel abroad, as you say, even for a vacation or a conference, that there's an assault to the senses at the beginning. There's no doubt about it. So we, instead of kind of fighting that, instead of being stressed out about it, we both tell the students when they go abroad, and also the students who come to us. And we always used to say, when I was director of global education, we have two shoulders to cry on if you need that time to get through it, is just to get comfortable with it, work through it in a few days, within a week. It's real, it's genuine, and you're going to adjust. It's real. I mean, it's everything. When your food is different and when you eat is different, and And the shock can actually be even most profound in the classroom. The classroom experience really changes depending on the country that you're talking about. And so that can be stressful, but the really important thing at Millersville and across the state system, we have these great support program offices, and they're experienced and they know what they need to do to get them through that rough patch.
If I had a child, a young adult, in a foreign land, and I was considering as a parent sending them off to the United States for a higher educational opportunity, I can't think of a better, more intimate, secure, and wonderful location than one of our 14 state universities in Pennsylvania. A place where I as a father could feel comfortable that my son or daughter was safe in a wonderful and welcoming environment, a small town atmosphere, so that they could quickly become a big fish in a small pond, if you will, and know that we're set up to take in those students and make sure we're treating them like they are our sons and daughters.
Exactly.
Do you find that at Millersville?
Very much so. We have an extremely passionate international alum corps around the world, and that was the big thing they said, is they felt really that they weren't a number, they didn't fall through the cracks, that their worries were our worries, and we really kind of supported them through that process. And I really do think it's very telling that whether they're exchange students even for one semester, or they're there for the whole degree, or they come for their graduate degree, they come by to say goodbye to us. It's a very important part of that ritual of leaving us, because they have felt just such a strong attachment. And so they really, it's just an incredibly, it's a cliche to say it's life-changing, but it is.
Well, Dr. Kirsten Bookmiller from Millersville University, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you spending some time with us today on such an important topic. And thank you more for the service that you provide to Millersville University and its students. We're delighted to have you with us today, and thank you.
Thanks so much.
Coming up next, explore more opportunities offered at the universities in Pennsylvania's state system of higher education.
Success doesn't come easy, but with determination, it comes often. We are all Americans, national champions, scholars, and successful alumni who bleed borough pride. We are Fighting Scots.
And at Edinburgh University, we create champions on and off the field.
Welcome back to Infinite Opportunities. Next, we go to Millersville University to see how their global studies programs provide an opportunity for students to learn how experiencing foreign cultures can benefit their future career choices.
A degree in international studies offers students a vast amount of knowledge in many, many different areas. Now, they get to pick their areas, so they can pick environmental issues, or they can pick economic issues, they can pick Asia, Europe, Africa. It's up to them, really. What they get prepared for is critical reading, writing, thinking, to be able to analyze an environment outside of the national environment. They can work in think tanks, they can work in DC, they can work for the federal government, they can go abroad and work in organizations abroad. So it really does open up a large number of different avenues that students can explore.
Well, I always wondered about the world because the world is so big, but being in America, I'm not seeing the whole world for what it is. So by choosing international studies as my minor, I can finally explore the world and see how big it is. I would like to be able to work with an NGO or IGO in Asia. I've always been fascinated with the Asian culture, and by working with these type of organizations, I can work with people of Asian descent and understand their culture and have cross-cultural communication with them and find out more about people of a different origin.
I believe studying abroad aids students who are taking traditional classes. Traditional classes do an excellent job at providing students with that knowledge and that skill base, but it's very difficult as educators to provide students with that real-world experience. So in addition to giving them that real-world experience through study abroad, I think that studying abroad provides students with an opportunity to challenge themselves personally.
My experience prepared me for the world of social work by throwing me right in. So it really helped me to take initiative to learn what social work is going to be like. So I got a real, awakening of what social work is like, the paperwork aspect, the difficulty with different clients, dealing with children, the outside aspect where I was dealing with external social workers, the court system. So it gave me a small preview of what I would be getting myself into when I came back to America. Despite the differences, the foundation was all the same.
I would definitely recommend Millersville Study Abroad programs to other students, because even if it's not directly related to your field of study, being able to go out and experience another culture, another country is such a valuable experience, because you're able to learn things like independence and have more confidence in yourself. You're also able to meet people from other countries who have different perspectives and different ways of viewing the world. So being able to go out and meet those people really expands your view and makes you kind of more knowledgeable about a lot more things than you would be if you were just living in one country.
The combination of our international studies program with its academic focus on understanding the world, along with our Global Education and Partnerships Office, which provides international opportunities for our students, provides a unique opportunity for students that our prospective students and parents are very interested in. Our students learn about the world through their coursework, and then they experience that world through international travel, where they not only move to these other countries, but also immerse themselves in the cultures, in the classrooms with the students. It gives them a unique perspective on the world and a unique perspective on their own country as viewed through the eyes of the rest of the world.
Coming up next, explore more opportunities offered at the universities in Pennsylvania's state system of higher education.
They say life is a marathon, not a sprint. Regardless, you are always looking for the finish line. Maybe you started college, got sidetracked before completing your degree. Now is the time to get it done. California University of Pennsylvania takes your classroom and on-the-job experience and uses it to help you earn your degree quickly and affordably. With CalU's Finish Line program, your college degree is closer than you think. Visit finishline.calu.edu.
Welcome back to Infinite Opportunities. Next, we go to Lock Haven University to discover the benefits to both students who study abroad as well as to international students attending LHU.
My name is Yerigina Anastasia Andreevna, and I'm a matriculated student in Lock Haven University, and I'm also an international student from Russia.
The Institute for International Studies serves as an umbrella organization responsible for all of the international programming on campus, including new exchange partnerships and exchange programs.
Well, it was a great experience. I learned a lot there, so much that I couldn't put the words right now. It would take a lot, but they prepared me very well. We had a couple meetings to let us know about what life would be like there.
The IIS, they're very helpful just to every international student here. They help us a lot with just like going through culture shock, and different professors come to us and talk about the behavior in the room.
While I was abroad, not only did I mingle with people from Scotland, fellow students, I also had time to travel to other countries. And even those experiences, you learn just as much as you would learn in a classroom just by going out and discovering on your own.
We have many programs during the year. Like we go to New York. Recently we went to Amish country, which is a very different experience for many international students because they've never seen people like that.
One of the greatest benefits of studying abroad through Lock Haven partner institutions is that students continue to pay tuition to Lock Haven. There are also a lot of institutions abroad that offer our students room and board for free.
The biggest fear of people about going abroad is they think, well, it's very expensive. And you'll find when you're abroad, it's not as expensive as you think. There's actually ended up being about the exact same as it is here if you lived on campus in a traditional dorm.
So my first freshman semester, that was probably the toughest semester ever, but it would be more harder if the professors wouldn't help us. They do spend time with us, like they work with us throughout the class, so it's not as scary as I thought.
Students change quite a bit when they study abroad. They get to see the world from another perspective.
I'm more open than I used to be. I mean, I've always considered myself fairly open, but until you actually go abroad and experience different cultures, then you truly learn how to understand people's differences, and it helps you in the workplace, I believe, as well.
It's very prestigious to, first of all, being here and then go back home. Like, I will get my job right away in graphic and online designer. Like, I do know English, and it's very, like, all employers like when their employees know different languages.
Employers today really value having an international background, intercultural training, and especially those students who study in a place where English is not the first language. Those students come back with a second language skill, which is extremely valuable today.
And many people have landed great internships because of the professors and staff we have here. And that's what mainly attracted me to this school.
Whenever you go to a big city, like, it's not America. Like, here, like, heaven in any other small towns is America. Like, it's very traditional. I would really recommend people just to come here and see that.
Coming up next, explore more opportunities offered at the universities in Pennsylvania's state system of higher education.
I wake up at 2:30 every morning to start my day. I'll shoot a live segment, then minutes later go out to cover something in the community. Even on the hardest days, I always remember being in my Clarion dorm room and just hoping that this exact moment would happen. No matter what I do, no matter how far I go, I always think about my Clarion professors and how they helped make me the confident woman I am today.
Welcome back to Infinite Opportunities. Next, we go to Westchester University to find out how the Center for International Programs helps students understand the concept of a global village.
I think Westchester University was primed and ready for all things international. But really what we've seen over the last, again, year or two is kind of a multiplying effect. That we've committed ourselves as an institution at Westchester to double the number of students studying abroad, and we actually have almost hit that goal over the last 2 years. We've increased the number of international institutional partnerships overseas with universities in Guatemala, in France, Costa Rica, universities in the Cayman Islands, as just a small sample of the kinds of institutional partnerships that we've developed over time. One of the reasons why I like working here, because everybody is engaged. They want to see our students be successful. And if that success means traveling overseas on a study abroad program, if it means providing them with an opportunity to be in the classroom with an international student with different perspectives and a different culture and a different way of looking at things, again, we've done our job. We want to make sure that every student understands that regardless of their major, regardless of their income, regardless of their academic standing, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, there's an opportunity for them to study abroad and go international.
Study abroad helps students in several different ways. On a personal level, it really helps shape their worldviews. We all think that we have a good idea of what the world's like out there, but I think that you can't really actually know about the world until you've been out and you've seen it. And then in the professional sense, they develop skills, and it's something that they can talk about in a job interview. It's something that helps make them stand out from every other applicant applying for the same job.
As a former international student and as a big proponent of global education, global entrepreneurship, and global citizenry, I would say it's imperative that we have more international students coming to Westchester, becoming more of a global village. And having more international students joining Westchester University, that is very fundamental for not only the students who are coming in, but also for the American students who are here. Creating an environment of freedom and comfort and peace, that's what really I care about most when it comes to serving the students.
Our world is interconnected. Sometimes it's that interconnectivity that leads to negative, stereotypical portrayals of Americans. So what I try to do is dispel any of those negative perceptions and make them feel welcomed and let them know it's okay, we're here for you.
Coming up next, explore more opportunities offered at the universities in Pennsylvania's state system of higher education.
If you're a high-achieving Pennsylvania high school senior or transfer student, Millersville University has 3 new scholarship award programs that can mean big savings. These new Team PA merit-based awards are renewable for up to 4 years as long as you maintain your GPA. The Student of Distinction Scholarship, the High Achievement Scholarship, and the 1857 Scholarship. Visit us at mansfield.edu/TeamPA for details. Ask for Team PA today.
Welcome back to Infinite Opportunities. Next, we go to Bloomsburg University to learn how a professor uses the study of geography to help students connect significant global issues to their daily lives.
Geography Matters is one of the most important things that I emphasize in my introductory courses as well as my upper-level geography and environmental science courses. The central question that I use to kind of start off all my courses is what is where, why there, and why care? And part of this has to do with the fact that I find that it's overwhelming for students when they first come into an introductory level geography course. And for so many of them, there's this sense of apathy about not only geography, but environmental issues. So I find that it's really easy for students to be dismissive if we're talking about an issue of global significance that they don't find any kind of personal link or personal connection to. So I try to aim to get them to understand how their lifestyles, how their daily choices and their daily decisions factor into some of those bigger life events and global significant events. So whether we're talking about issues related to climate change in sub-Saharan Africa or the accelerated aging of the population in Europe, it gets them to think about, well, what are the larger or the broader social, economic, political, ethnic effects of these things? And getting them to understand that for everything that's happening, there's a multitude of global, local, regional effects. So I think emphasizing that and the ability to get them to think critically and spatially about these things is really going to help them regardless of their career paths that they choose after those classes. One of the things that makes this unique to my specific course is that it allows students to get engaged with content that they're interested in. World Regional Geography is one of the broadest courses that we have in the department, and the goal is to get students to understand that these are just a multitude of issues that we could talk about in the most basic sense. And it's to get them interested in things like pop culture, sports, things that you wouldn't necessarily think have an apparent link to geography actually do. So it allows for them to also investigate topics that we may not get a chance to talk about in depth in World Regional Geography. So by allowing them to kind of look at what's happening outside the US and getting them to look at the news and actually looking forward to looking at what's happening in the news is something that I think will hopefully stick with some of them.
Come back next week to learn more of the infinite opportunities at the state system's 14 universities, or visit us online.